In this video, I want to talk a little bit about catching bass in the pre-spawn, but with top water baits. I think that this is one of the more overlooked categories of lures during the pre-spawn, and it can be one that will catch some of the biggest bass in the bodies of water that we fish. So in this video, we're going to talk a little bit about pre-spawn top water fishing. Now, before we get into it, this video is brought to you by my apparel company, Fin Fishing. And right now for the month of March, I am running a deal over at Fin Fishing. If you buy a USA made sun shirt or one of the new pair of duck shorts that is waterproof, lightweight, highly durable, you're actually going to receive a free Buzzer Rocks blood stop formula. So this is just a little canister that anytime you catch a bass, whether this is from the bank or from the boat, you can use this canister on the fish if they are bleeding. If you hooked them bad, they're bleeding real bad, simply spray a little bit on that fish and it will help stop that blood, and it will also help to start healing that fish a lot quicker. So pretty cool little product. You can also just pick them up if you want to just pick them up. Down below, I'll leave links for everything. So shopping at Fin Fishing is truly the best way to help support this channel. I greatly appreciate all of you who have done so. All right, let's talk a little bit about pre-spawn top water fishing. To me, this is truly a technique that you don't catch a ton of fish on, but it seems like the ones that you catch during the pre-spawn on top waters tend to be some of the biggest bass in the lakes that we fish. And there's two top waters that I throw most of the time during this time frame, the pre-spawn. And again, the pre-spawn for me and for a lot of anglers, it's kind of typically between like 50 and 60 degree water temperature. So to me, I have caught some bass right around that 47 degree mark on top waters before, but really it seems like mid 50s is where you start to get a lot more bites on top waters in that pre-spawn. And where I'm really targeting a lot of these pre-spawn bass is kind of these are a lot of times the first fish that move into some of these shallow, flatter spawning areas, or they are kind of on that last deep water area close to these spawning grounds. So a lot of times when I'm throwing a top water, I am going to be throwing it around these places where the bass are spawning. To me, what I really feel like, we've discussed this a lot, but these fish, I feel like they just move up. Some of these big ones will move up into the spawning grounds, and these are the fish that you can catch on top waters. And then you see a lot of bucks, a lot of smaller bass that move in, and they kind of, once you start catching a lot of bucks, you know that the spawn is really getting close, because it feels like they kind of replace a lot of the females in these areas, and you catch a lot of them, and then the bass make beds, and then the females are swimming around, and the bucks will kind of coerce them to the bed. But when those fish are kind of first moving up there, I think a topwater is a really good bait to throw. And the two that I throw primarily are a buzzbait and a topwater frog of some sort, like a hollow body frog. Those are the ones that I've had the most success on during the pre-spawn. And I've told this story before, but I think it's just worth noting. A long time ago, I was fortunate to grow up on a pond that was in my parents' backyard. And I remember one of the first or second days when the ice got off the water. So literally the water is probably still in the 40s. I had got some frogs for Christmas. I was really excited to go out there and just test them out. I wasn't even trying to catch a bass. I just wanted to see how these frogs worked. And I actually had a fish blow up on a frog like just a few days after the water temperature, after the water had like unfroze. And so it just goes to show you that bass are not afraid to hit topwater baits. Now, the one thing that I've definitely noticed with a pre-spawn topwater bite is that it happens a little bit more when you have these warming trends, or it tends to happen more in the afternoon time. If you get to the body of water that you're fishing and you had a pretty cool night for the region or the area that you live in, those aren't always the best times to throw a topwater in the morning when you're in, especially when you're dealing with that, like I said, colder water. 50, 55, whatever, somewhere in that range. So a lot of times this is more of an afternoon bite for me, or again, if you kind of have these warming trends. Some of those first really warm nights, you will see a lot of fish flood up into shallow water. And those can be really good days the next day to go out there and throw a frog or a buzzbait. Now, one of the biggest keys with topwater fishing in the pre-spawn that's a little bit different than the rest of the year is that I'm really going to be working these baits pretty slow. Now, obviously a frog, you can work as slow as you want. You can cast it out there, you can let it sit on the surface for you want. And I even suggest doing that at times. Sometimes just cast that thing out. I remember, I think it was like Bill Dance or it was probably Bill Dance, maybe Hank Parker. They talked about when throwing a topwater to always let the ripples, when that bait hits the water, let those ripples die down and then just twitch that bait one time. I remember hearing that when I was a kid, and I have applied this my entire like fishing career. Like I've always done that. And in the pre-spawn, what happens a lot of times is you will get a lot of bites on that one little twitch. You throw that bait out there, it lands, and you know, for a frog, those frog legs are kind of just in the water, and you will see at times bass rise up to it, and then you just make that small twitch after the rings kind of settle, and they just come up there. And a lot of times it's not a super aggressive bite in the pre-spawn. It's more of a slurp or kind of just like a whoosh. Like it's not like a katoosh, big blow up that we see a lot in the summertime. It's more of just they slurp it down, and you can set the hook, you can jack those fish. Now, when it comes to a buzzbait, obviously you can't always fish a buzzbait. Like you can't cast a buzzbait out and let it sit there, it's gonna sink. But what you can do with a buzzbait is use a buzzbait that it has a bigger blade on it, but has a smaller sized weight. So a lot of times this time of the year, I'm gonna throw like a 1/4 ounce buzzbait because a 1/4 ounce buzzbait, you can fish it a lot slower while keeping it on the surface. And that's the key. I really wanna just keep this bait up on the surface just enough to keep that blade turning. And just a reminder, and I've already said it, you are not going to get a tremendous amount of bites typically in the pre-spawn on topwater baits. But the ones that you get typically are good ones. They're typically some of the best ones that you will catch throughout these could be some of the biggest bass that you catch throughout the entire year, because again, these are pre-spawn bass. They weigh a lot, they're fat, a lot of times they're big females. So anyways, the big thing that I just want to say, do not forget about topwaters in the pre-spawn and just go out there and catch you a big. All right guys, hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you tomorrow.